He verbally abused, wrongfully accused, and denies culpability for the physical, the mental, and financial harms inflicted on Canadians. He realized, actually, that he couldn't make COVID vaccines his supposed ticket to a majority government if our Canadian Armed Forces members were not fully vaccinated, and so ordered our serving members, who were put through a horrific process of mandates, restrictions, and punishment, which left our ranks depleted, our men and women in uniform demoralized, and many seriously injured.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
I begin my intervention with a quote. It's hard not to feel disappointed in your government when every day there's a new scandal. Speaker, these are the prophetic words of the Honourable Member for Papineau, our current Prime Minister of Canada. And how true those words ring today. After 9 years of scandal, corruption, and Liberal entitlement, the business of the House has been put on hold to discuss a new scandal of monumental proportions, the Green Slush Fund. This government didn't like the fact that the former chair of Sustainable Development Technology Canada, or SDTC, was being publicly critical of their agenda. So they fired him and replaced him with one of their friends. This replacement was known to the government as holding blatant conflicts, as she had interests in companies receiving funding from CDTC. The PMO, PCO, and the minister were warned about these conflicts and the risks involved, but they appointed her anyway. The new chair went on to create an environment where conflicts of interest are tolerated and managed by board directors. What ensued was the creation of a slush fund for Liberal insiders. The Auditor General found the SDTC gave out $390 million taxpayer dollars in inappropriate contracts. This included $58 million to 10 projects that couldn't account for an environmental benefit or the development of green technology. In 180 cases, it included $334 million to projects in which board members held a conflict of interest. All the while, senior Industry Canada officials witnessed these conflicts but did not intervene. The Auditor General herself placed the blame directly on the industry minister, who did not sufficiently monitor the contracts that were being given out. The minister was going further than that. He was actively covering up the existence of these shady deals. Where he failed, this side of the House attempted to deliver some form of accountability for taxpayer money. Before adjourning for the summer, this House adopted a motion calling for documents related to SDTC to be turned over to the RCMP for review. At no point in the motion did it say that the instructions were optional. At no point did it instruct the government to redact information. And as you know, Speaker, the House enjoys the absolute and unbound power to order the production of documents, period. You found that this government's refusal to properly comply with the House order constituted a breach of privilege. That's our government. This wasn't a simple mistake by this NDP Liberal government. It was a calculated maneuver to avoid the discovery of any potential criminal activity that may have occurred under this government's watch. The SDTC whistleblower had suggested as much. They admitted that the Auditor General's investigation only scraped the surface, and if her investigation was focused on the real intent of those transactions, of course they would find criminal activity. And Speaker, thank goodness, breaking news yesterday, the RCMP has announced that they will be investigating, and of course they have full authority to substantiate any criminal activities that occurred within this organization. The fact that the NDP Liberals have tried to cover them up and prevent Parliament from shining a light on these transactions is a serious, serious indictment of their disdain for our democratic system. For the sake of our country and our reputation around the world, I wish the Green Slush Fund was the only case of corruption and disrespect for Parliament. Now it's been two speakers who have ordered the government to produce documents requested by this House, by this Parliament. And on both occasions, Liberals have failed to do so. The former Speaker found that the Liberals breached parliamentary privilege when they refused to produce House-ordered documents regarding the transfer of Ebola and Henipah viruses from the Winnipeg lab to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and the subsequent revocation of security clearances of 2 Chinese nationals. For the Prime Minister, the Conservatives wanted to know why 2 scientists with deep connections to the Chinese military were even able to obtain high-level Canadian security clearances and conduct work with dangerous viruses. What was this government's reaction? They thumbed their noses at Parliament. Conservatives ensured that the President of the Public Health Agency was called to the bar of the House of Commons to be reprimanded by the Speaker, something that this Parliament has not had happen in over 100 years. Also related to the pandemic was when the Prime Minister decided to use it for his own partisan gain. Canadians did not want an election in 2021, but he decided to call one anyways, based on differences of opinion between the Liberals and Conservatives on how the pandemic could be managed, and he thought he could wedge Canadians. For the Prime Minister, it was his way or the highway. The Prime Minister rolled the dice, and Canadians said no way. He failed to get a majority, but destroyed so many people's lives in the process. He verbally abused, wrongfully accused, and denies culpability for the physical, the mental, and financial harms inflicted on Canadians. He realized, actually, that he couldn't make COVID vaccines his supposed ticket to a majority government if our Canadian Armed Forces members were not fully vaccinated. And so, ordered our serving members, who were put through a horrific process of mandates, restrictions, and punishment, which left our ranks depleted, our men and women in uniform demoralized, and many seriously injured. The ramifications of his decisions will be felt in our armed forces for years to come. Yeah. Like a mantra, Liberals continually said over on that side of the floor that every decision that they were making throughout the pandemic was rooted in science. And they depended on medical professionals because they themselves were not. But here too, they went over the heads of all parliamentarians, over the head of the Speaker, and even the professional House of Commons nurse by denying members of this House the ability to do their jobs on behalf of their constituents in this place. When it came to vaccination status and precinct access, they pushed aside the medical professional, the nurse. The Speaker ruled that she was the only one with a professional medical authority to make public health decisions for members of Parliament and House of Commons staff. The Speaker also ruled that the Board of Internal Economy had overstepped its mandate in its vaccine requirements in this place. And that is when this Prime Minister, for overt personal political purposes, blatantly overrode the scientifically supported public health decisions of the House medical professional and took his own Liberal Speaker to court for daring to do his job without partisan political interference. And then there's a time I'll never forget, the first debate that I participated in that sought to remove the government's accountability to this House. It was in regard to the environmental framework. The bill sought to give sweeping power to the minister and accountability to an advisory board. Today, with the Green Slush Fund, we're certainly hearing how good that works out for us when one minister has a little bit too much of himself. Somewhat alarmed over this, I questioned the freshly minted member from West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country, about this board. Like, what was it going to look like? How many would be on it? Where were they going to come from? And what would their credentials be to give Canadians confidence? What would their mandate be? How long would they serve? Questions like that. Well, the member could not wait to rise and say, the board's already been chosen. With debate barely initiated in this House, the deed was already done. Speaker, from the Green Slush Fund to this government's management of the pandemic, to the obsession with appointing oversight bodies with little or no accountability to Parliament, these Liberals have a very unhealthy tendency to take more and more rights and responsibilities away from opposition in the House and giving more and more power to ministers and outside governing bodies that are not accountable to this place. In September of 2016, within his very first year of winning the incredible honor and the privilege to be first servant, Prime Minister, first servant to Canadians, this Prime Minister said, and I'm quoting him here, this is at the beginning of serving this place and serving Canadians, quote, "There is no core identity, no mainstream in Canada," and he concluded that he sees Canada as the first post-national state. I don't think he went to Canadians on that. These are all ideologies, behaviors, conscious decisions that are made by this government, made by this Prime Minister, to obscure and deny the depth of their political corruption. These are decisions that are made with no regard for what is best for Canada. Parliament is just an inconvenience for this Prime Minister, and it always has been. Only common sense Conservatives will end the NDP Liberal corruption. We will end their attack on Canada's sovereignty, on our institutions, on our way of life, on our democracy and rule of law, and we, on behalf of Canadians, the Conservative Party of Canada, will get the answers that Canadians deserve. They are asking for answers, and they want them. This member from Papineau and every member of this NDP Liberal government has absolutely failed in their duty to be accountable to Canadians, and Canadians have had enough. We keep hearing about, well, we need to listen to Canadians. Believe me, Madam Speaker, we have. They only have one thing that is absolutely top of mind, and that is to remove this Prime Minister and his corrupt government. Taxes are up, way up. Costs are up, way up to where Canadians cannot afford the basic things in life, and they are struggling. Crime is up, like over 100% in so many areas. What they are doing to this country is so regressive. It's regressive. It's not progressive. It is regressive. It is destroying our nation. And Canadians are saying their time is up. The vast majority of Canadians want a carbon tax election, and for them, we'll bring it home.
Hear, hear. Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I get it. The member personally doesn't like the Prime Minister.